My name is Imogen Holmes-Roe. I am curator of historic art at the Whitworth, which is in Manchester in the UK. In Light and Shade is travelling over from the UK to Uyang here. So the exhibition was planned for what would have been the 250th anniversary of J.M.W. Turner's birth. He is still celebrated as one of Britain's greatest artists. And when we were planning the exhibition, we wanted to look at a lesser known aspect of Turner's practice, but one that is incredibly important. The Liber Studiorum was first published in 1807 and dominated the next 12 years of Turner's life to 1819. And he produced it when he was already a Royal Academician, but he chose to embark on a print project and landscape at a time when both were considered inferior arts. But what we can see when we look at his prints is that actually they informed his practice as a painter. So Turner was clearly trying to elevate the status of prints. He wanted people to understand that prints were translations. They weren't duplications. In the Liber series, only 19 out of the 71 prints derive from his finished paintings. So, even those where you can see the relationship between the painting and the print, you can observe real significant changes. He was constantly adapting, he was constantly modifying scenes and reworking things. So they were never intended to be duplications. He wanted to lift and elevate the status of landscape art for people to appreciate it at a time when it was still considered an inferior art form. And I think what's really interesting is, John Ruskin, who was one of Turner's greatest supporters, he talked about Turner, and this is where the title of the exhibition comes from, Light and Shade, that he paints in colour, but he thinks in light and shade. And I think that's where you can see that sort of translation, his ability to translate pigment into kind of lines and dots. These were how he was able to take tone and adapt it into the monochrome. But when you start to compare his works, which you have the opportunity to do in the exhibition between his paintings and his prints, in some cases the prints are equally as powerful, if not more, than the paintings themselves. And that was his ability to kind of translate simply by using tone rather than colour. So within the exhibition, we have paired some of the watercolours that are within the Whitworth's permanent collection with some of the Liber prints. They have no direct relationship, either geographically or chronologically, but what they do show is actually where there's this reciprocal relationship that forms between his painting and his print. And a really great example of that is the Liber print that's titled Peat Bog. So what he does within the scene is he manages to capture the aftermath of a storm. So Turner was celebrated for his ability to capture different weather conditions and elemental forces. This was an artist who is known for capturing the sublime, the kind of grandeur, the fear that nature can invoke in somebody, but also the absolute beauty. And I think an image like Peat Bog does that, even though he's done it entirely in a monochrome palette. How he's done that is again through his tone. So you have this kind of aftermath of a storm. So in the background you have this heavy curtain of rain that is falling down, and that's to the left of the image. And then to the right you have this beautiful rainbow that has appeared, and you don't need the full colours of the rainbow to see, to recognise that that is exactly what it is. And a rainbow sort of signifies the passing of a storm. And you have these figures in the foreground that are moving through this very kind of calm body of water. So you feel like you're very much within the scene, but you've come at it at a point in which this storm has passed, and it's a very tranquil scene actually. He mastered the technique himself. So, he taught himself how to do mezzotint as part of the process. He etched, just about all of the prints himself. So it was a huge, he very much tightly controlled. He had a very close oversight over the whole project to ensure that what people see are exactly what Turner wanted them to see. So I don't know if that's something. Well, Turner was, one of his greatest achievements was raising or elevating the landscape genre. At the time that he was working, history painting sat at the very top. But what Turner did, amongst other artists, was he got that genre recognised. He had works regularly exhibited at the Royal Academy that celebrated landscape painting. And he was constantly, the way that he was able to manipulate paint and capture different elemental effects, different types of weather, different landscapes, different times of day. He travelled widely. He was really interested in capturing different landscapes, and I think that is something that captivated people who looked at his art. And it was incredibly experimental. He faced criticism, particularly in the latter years of his life, but his work still continues to inspire new generations of artists through time, from Claude Monet, Mark Rothko, to today, we've got contemporary artists like Tracey Emin, Cornelia Parker, who all acknowledge the role that Turner has had in their own practice. Even though it's been 250 years since Turner's birth, he's still widely celebrated as Britain's greatest painter. I think that has continued up until today. In 2020, his face was used on the new £20 British sterling note. People voted for who they wanted to see on the back of that. So it shows the kind of cultural significance that Turner still has. I think it's easy for people to think, well, that his painting, that was from a long time ago, that's sort of, that's history. But actually, what he was doing was incredibly ahead of his time. He was today's version of a contemporary artist. He was constantly pushing the boundaries of art and what art could do. And I think that still stands the test of time today. Just in this last year, there have been 33 international exhibitions or events dedicated to celebrating Turner's legacy. Well, I think one of the greatest legacies that Turner left was his bequest. We now have a really fantastic, comprehensive record that is made up of hundreds of oil paintings, thousands of watercolours, drawings and prints that were kind of saved for the nation and that people can visit and view at various galleries, but particularly Tate in London, in the UK, for free. And it allows us to kind of look at what his legacy was, his development right from his very early days, right and through to his kind of later experimental phase. This was an artist who you can see the development of, impressionism appearing in his work, even abstract expressionism. With his very late works, he was controversial And he was constantly pushing the boundaries of what art can do. And I think obviously that is certainly recognised in the UK. And I think, you know, the biggest moment is probably in 1984 when the Turner Prize was set up to basically support the development of contemporary art. You know, Turner actually wanted to set up a fund to help support contemporary artists as part of his legacy, and I think that's been taken forward centuries later with the Turner Prize that celebrates kind of, you know, artists who are trying to kind of break the mold and do something new. So I think, yeah, the Turner Prize and Turner's legacy are all really intertwined. I think because Turner was so widely travelled, you know, he travelled across, Britain annually. When he was able to, he was travelling constantly throughout Europe. And I think the terrains, the different landscapes that he captured really complement the kind of surrounding beauty that you have here. It is the fact that he categorised his Liber Studiorum. That was something that was really innovative at that time. So he grouped his prints into architectural, into pastoral, into mountainous, marine, and you only have to step outside the gallery and that is exactly what is reflected in the surroundings of South Korea. So actually I think it's a perfect setting to be showing his collection here, because I think people will be able to see things in all of his works and be able to identify with their own landscapes here. We hope that you enjoy the show in your visit today, and we hope that you're able to really appreciate what Turner's vision was for the Liber Studiorum.